too, but that's better, right? I said a really great joke, my really wonderful joke. That was it. Okay. So welcome to the New Time Urban Institute seminar. This is a very special one for us. The topic today is the really unprecedented agreement between the Lax family and the National Institutes of Health. I'm delighted to be joined in this session by Dr. Dan Ford, who is the Vice Dean for Clinical Investigation at the School of Medicine, and two incredibly special guests, Ms. Veronica Spencer, who is Mrs. Henrietta Lax's great-granddaughter, and Mr. David Lax, who is Henrietta Lax's grandson. Mr. Lax and Ms. Spencer both represent the Lax family on a central feature of this agreement between the family and NIH, and I'm going to give it its proper name now, is the HeLa Genome Data Access Working Group. Right? That's what we are. So here's the plan for the hour. I'm going to start with some brief comments. By the way, I'm Ruth Faden. To introduce myself, I'm the director of the Institute. I'm going to start with some brief comments about the historical context and also the recent process. And then Dan will follow with some remarks about the science, in particular the project that was the catalyst for the most recent turn of events in March 2013, and anything else connected like that. And then I'll get the discussion going by asking Veronica and David their thoughts and views, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience and time for hopefully some really good exchange. Just so everybody knows, we really do end coffee at 1:15. So I have a feeling this will be a conversation that will be hard to stop, but out of respect for other people's commitments and plans, people have to go back to work, people have to go to class. We're going to end at 1:15. So here's a little bit of the setup. I want everybody here to imagine that someone called you to tell you that something approximating your mother's or your grandmother's genome had just been published and posted in a public database without her knowledge or consent. Now I want you to imagine that your mother or your grandmother's identity was known to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people around the world. And effectively, so is yours. Moreover, I want you to imagine that this was not your family's first run-in with big science. That although your mother's or your grandmother had never given her consent to the use of her cells for this or any other scientific purpose, that over 74,000 scientific publications have either used or mentioned her cell line. That for the first 20 years, when so much of the scientific activity was going on, no one in the family even knew that her cells were being bought and sold and used in science all over the world. That when your mother's or grandmother's identity was finally made public, no one in the family was even notified, let alone asked for permission. And that members of the family had been asked for and provided blood samples without understanding that their samples, too, were being used to advance science. And of course, you would also have to imagine that when all of this got started in the 1950s, early 1950s, your parents or your grandparents were poor and poorly educated African Americans living in the segregated city of Baltimore. You're imagining all of that, and then maybe you would begin to appreciate the situation that the Lax family was in March of 2013. This time, however, proved to be very different. Controversy and criticism erupted immediately, including a pivotal, New York Times op-ed by Rebecca Skloot, the author of the best-selling Immortal Life of Henrietta Lax, which I'm guessing almost everybody in this room has read, and certainly everyone is familiar with. A really remarkable process was initiated by NIH. The NIH director, Francis Collins, and also Kathy Hudson, who's the deputy director at NIH for Science, Outreach, and Policy, and the Lax family became engaged in a process in which Dan Ford and I were privileged participate. There were 3 meetings at Hopkins in which all of us got together. Rebecca joined by phone, and I think I joined once by phone too. Rebecca and I also participated in phone conversations with members of the family between meetings, and God knows how many family meetings you all had during the course of that process. The upshot was an agreement, an actual agreement between the family and NIH that has 3 key features. First, full HeLa sequence data are to be put in a controlled access database. Second, the family is to be represented, and Veronica and David are their representatives now, on the working group that reviews requests for access to the data. And third, and I think really importantly, any dissemination of research results that follow from the use of the full HeLa sequence data must include an acknowledgement now, honoring the contribution of Mrs. Lax and expressing gratitude to Mrs. Lax and her family. So that's the setup, and then I'm going to turn to Dan, and then on to Veronica.
Well, I think just to provide a little bit more context for you, as Ruth mentioned, and I'm sure that the family members will tell about this as well. I mean, one of the unique components about this, right, is we go from a cell line that we don't even know exactly who the identity is, and is it HeLa, and trying to figure it out, and these tens of these decades where there continue to be these surprises. And every time the thought is we sort of got everything out in the open, and this is how we're going to go forward, another surprise comes. And I do think if you look at this, so this was the European Molecular Biology Laboratory that published part of the genome, and they use the phrase, right, we cannot infer anything about Henrietta Lacks' genome or of her descendants from the data generated in this study. Which, of course, when you say something like that, is a challenge to other scientists who say that is, that's not correct. And so that the genome data was used to create something like a 23andMe-like report. If any of you have seen these full genome reports, and they will, mention 100 genes or so that will talk about this level of risk, and it's small or unsure or what it was. And so when the publication first came, then that and there was this statement that you couldn't do it. Then the challenge occurred. The 23andMe type report came up, and I do think, and they can mention this themselves, right? You're very hard to say, well, this is my grandmother, my great-grandmother. I'm not sure how this really responds to me. Yet it created, quite a personal report that is up online. And that's what I think the danger is of any of these genomic libraries are there, that the potential to create such a report is there. Also, as was noted through the discussion, sometimes those reports, because the genomic analysis was not actually even done correctly, you're not even positive if these results that are being posted are accurate or not. So you have, potential statements that you're not really able to refute, accept, or decide. So I think that's part of the context when we started meeting with the family, and went through the process. And in fact, there, parts of the HeLa cell genome had been published over many decades, but never with the amount or the ability to make the interpretations that came with this particular report. So I think this was a unique situation because of the importance, the familiarity, what is known about the HeLa cell. Yet it's not something that doesn't. We also shouldn't think won't happen in the future as more genetic information becomes available.
Our plan is to leave lots of time for discussion and conversation, but I thought I would start by asking the
Twitter. That's some kind of genome was probably some HeLa sequence, but at the time I really didn't know the scope of what that meant. So Rebecca had also contacted Jerry, my sister, and let her know that the HeLa genome sequence has been released to the public by Germany. And she actually wanted to know what it actually meant. So her and Jerry had the discussion, and she wasn't too happy about it because, again, like I said, the genome was released without our consent, without us even knowing or getting aware that this was coming to tuition. So that's when Jerry and Rebecca went back on what to do with the next steps. And as you mentioned, that Rebecca put that op-ed in the New York Times focusing on how, this is happening again. The HeLa genome was published without consent manual, without knowledge, or even giving us some kind of warning.
When we found after Rebecca and Jerry went back and forth, Rebecca was very good about talking to us all about what's going on and what we're looking forward to. But as you can imagine, it made our family feel like we're in a vulnerable state because our mission in the beginning before it happened was we were trying to get over, a lot of people in the family had their health care and if they should go to the doctor, and we were just getting over that hurdle, so there's something else wrong in our path. So, Rebecca came to us with it and made us feel like, will we be able to get health insurance? Will they deny us? Will they look at us? Like, what's going to happen to us? So it was a lot of back and forth with family in terms of what should we do, how should we do it, where does this leave us?
How about, could you just tell us a little bit, and then we'll get to when you first heard from NIH, and were you surprised by the response? The director of NIH wanted to talk to you.
Yes, I'm very, wow, the director of the NIH wanted to speak with us. But I mean, he was very pleased, he was taking it seriously, the fact that the NIH wanted to talk to us and, inform us and really meet with us and go over what was going on and work out some possible solutions. So I was very impressed and they really actually doing this. They want to sit down and talk with us and explain what is going on and what is the genome. It's actually, since Dr. Francis Collins was the one who initiated the Human Genome Project, I was even more impressed because of his credentials. It was like, okay, this person actually knows what they're talking about, knows everything about what's going on. So I was very pleased that Dr. Francis and Dr. Kathy came down, and Kathy was wonderful as well. Very informative.
So our family wound up being into teams because we had one team just like, okay, let's see what they're saying, let's follow this, let's find out what's going on and get all the facts. And then you just had another team of family members who were just enraged. And my grandfather, my first time actually coming to the meeting, he was just like, no, shut it down, tell my family, do. And I was just like, my uncle was so upset. I was like, okay, I'm going to hear this out with them. And, our family, we talked again afterwards and we came to the decision like, okay, NIH, they had a heart. And that's what we were looking for because a lot of times in time, it feels so cold and impersonal, especially with the way that things have happened to our family. So when I heard, and it's the first time in history that scientists sit down and say, we're going to make you part of this. We're sorry for what we've done to you because no one has ever given us an apology before, and NIH for the first time did, and it showed us that science is changing, and it's changing for the better. So our family felt very comfortable with it, and then David had the job to go back and talk to my grandfather, which is Lawrence Lex, the oldest son, and he gave us a little hassle, but once he heard it, he said, okay, we can do this, but I'm going to be responsible.
He was always in for it. He just again, you get surprised. I guess imagine, like you said, at first your grandmother was taken and you didn't know about it. And 20 years later, your wife comes and says, guess what? I found out. And because she overheard it at a dinner. And so she had to come back home and tell her husband this. So he had that experience already. So now comes up 40 years later, and then now he hears about the genome. So he was apprehensive, but he said he still wanted to help scientists and trying to cure cancer, but he was just, I guess it's just the way it came out that he didn't appreciate it too much. But he didn't want to, he gave it a little heart. I think it was Ryan who gave it a lot of time. And Lawrence, he was like, I just want to know what's going on, as opposed to stopping this what's going on. I just want to be informed. And that's what like across the board, the whole family, we more so want to know what's going on as opposed to finding out later or being surprised with it. So that was the most important aspect.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part of anything, anyone. When we all go to the hospitals, we go anywhere, we want to be informed of what's going on and how is it going to affect us. And the fact that it just got out there, it was just like, oh my goodness, like what's going on again? That again, so it felt like we were taking another 10 steps back. And it put us back in that vulnerable state, but NIH has done a wonderful job of making us comfortable and giving us the opportunity to see the science actually is changing, that we can trust again. And that was a big thing for us, because it was, should we trust? Because everybody wants something from us, is everyone trying to hurt us? Like, and we're a close-knit family, so it was more so we had to protect each other. So, yeah. We're happy going forward with that, it's very happy.
Dan, from your perspective, it should be acknowledged what a special role Dan has had over the years now in working and talking with the family. And it was pretty amazing to be having these meetings in your conference room.
Yeah, well, I think again, the family has done, first of all, not like all of our families, there's not 100% agreement. And the bigger the family is, the more variation in opinion there's going to be. And it does point out a little bit of these, difficulties as you broaden the net, looking at what the data, how does the data impact on people, and the breadth of that. But I do think, the Lax family has done a fantastic job over the last few years to kind of minimize the hurtful parts of what's happened to them, and concentrate on all of the benefits that have come to science and the world through the HeLa cells. And I think if they didn't come in to each situation with that general belief that we have, these cells have a valuable role to play, and we're going to find a way forward, none of this would work. So, I mean, for that, it's been, just fantastic to see the transformation of the family over the years.
I should just say one thing about the working group. There are now 9 members, right? Or 9%?
Yeah, they added 2 more.
They added 2 more members. So there are 9 members of the working group. And as I mentioned, Veronica and David represent the family. I'm on the working group. Kathy Hudson is on the working group. The chair is Renee Jenkins, who's a phenomenal person. And then everyone besides Kathy and the 3 of us also sits, I believe, on Francis Collins' advisory committees to NIH. So it's a structure that is an interesting one, and where the 3 of us have to have the science translated to us a lot, which is one of the challenges. You want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be on the working group?
Well, like I say, I'm an IT major, so I'm always reading and learning new stuff. But then that translates over to now I'm learning medical stuff. So like I was saying, I'm always reading genome books, medical books. When stuff comes on TV now about medical stuff, I follow that. So to me, it's fascinating, because then I actually be on the call with Russ, and he was explaining all the different types of HeLa types.
That's Russ Hopkins.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I almost full name. The different things going on in science, and the different uses of the cells, and the different uses of the genomes, and how people use them. So I myself find it fascinating and intriguing. So after I read the report, I'm going on the internet, Googling it, looking it up, seeing what things mean, and just working to understand it better. So for me, it's very exciting.
From me being on the working board, it's been amazing. I'm a nursing student, so of course I had to take all those science classes. We just try to get through by brain melting, and I've actually found a new love for science. At first it was just like, oh my goodness, here's bio, here's chemistry, and everything that at once challenge other people's brains and to challenge mine. So it's a new experience for us, and hopefully it'll open doors for other generations of blacks.
Well, let me ask one question. With all the discussion about how to interpret the genomic data and how many generations it was removed, and we went through all of what that means. As far as you know, has anybody from the family actually decided to get their whole genome sequence?
Yeah, no.
I haven't heard anybody.
I guess that's like a personal preference to anybody. We really want the genome sequence because right now, like I said, as far as Henrietta's sequence, at each generation, the genome displayed, okay, her kids had 50% of her genome, ours had 25%, Veronica had 15%, my kids will have, well, her kids have 5%, and it goes down and down in each generation. So Henrietta's genome can reveal some stuff about it, but it's not concrete. Now, if we go to and get our whole genome sequence, then, that'll open up a whole can of worms. Of course, it is a proportion of Henrietta's, but then they have our genome, where we have Alzheimer's disease, we have a bigger risk of cancer. What's our risk of diabetes? Like I always taught in my lecture, according to Henrietta's genome, I ain't going to go bald, but that's clearly not the case. So I constantly do like that gene. But, it opens up a whole can of worms. Basically comes to a personal preference. Do you want to know all this information about the stuff, or do you not? If you do, how are you going to take it in? Are you going to freak out because you might be all have Alzheimer's? Like they asked me, because we meet regularly with genetic counselors and stuff, to heal the genome. And I'm like, well, I don't care what it says. Go outside and get hit by a bus tomorrow. It really don't matter. If it, say I got this or got that. But some people, like they're reading and say they got Alzheimer's, so they freak out and start doing different things. So it comes down to a personal preference. And as of yet, nobody has stuff up to the plate to get their genome sequence.
No, not at all. We're still trying to get past the first hurdle. I actually, when I went to get my permit, my grandfather said to me he was going to pay for my permit at the tree for me helping him so much. And my cousin Josh had went with us. And the lady asked me, she said, would you like to be a donor? And I thought about it, and I said, if something happens, will you let me die? She's like, no, I don't think it works that way. So, my grandfather goes, he pays for my cousin. And he comes back, I made the decision that I was going to be a donor. And he explained, he said, well, why is her ID higher than my grandson's? Is it because she's a girl? She said, no, she's a donor, Mr. Lex. And he looked at me and he said, girl, you gonna give them your stuff and my dollar? So, at this moment, we're all just getting past the point of wanting to be donors. So, I'm looking forward to getting my genome done. Yeah.
Okay. There are a lot of people here. I'm sure that you want to say something or have a question, please. Go ahead. Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to focus a little bit on this committee, that the working group, and what are the factors, what do you take into consideration when you're looking at a proposal as to whether or not it's something you're comfortable approving?
One of the things that we're considering is if the person's who's applying are trying to do more than one type of study. Like if you say you're going to do something that has something to do with the brain, we're not looking forward to you coming up with the information on the feet. So that's basically one of the factors.
I think the main thing about it is disclosure. Like, as long as you're willing to tell us what you're doing with it, we'll go ahead and let you use it. But like I said, just let us know. The main thing, like I said, over the past 6 decades, everything has been a surprise. So now we just don't want to be surprised. More like, you send a request, go ahead and approve it, just let us know what you're doing with it.
If you're going to use the cells to make money off of them. Like if your research is going to come up with some type of, you're going to go out and you're going to, after you come up with that, or you come up with, what are you going to do particular cells with the HeLa cell. So it's a lot that we look at, and we have a wonderful team of people who go back and forth to make sure that the scientists who are using the cells are doing exactly what they say they're doing.
There's, I think there are like 5 or 7, I guess, specific things that,
Yes.
that 5 or 7, I forgot now, I could have brought the form that people who want to access the data have to answer and satisfy. One really important one is a commitment to include the acknowledgement statement in any publication.
We haven't really came across nothing that was definitively like say, oh, no, you can't have this. Like I said, financial disclosure is just that, that's disclosure. I think if anything, we more about data security. Can you protect the data once you download it, once you have it in your possessions? Anything else, like I said, is mainly disclosure, because we really haven't came up with no set of terms to say, no, you can't do this. So, because we want to be open to scientists, because we don't know what they want to come up with, or what area they're looking for. So we don't want to, I guess, hamper them. We let them go ahead, but like I said, let us know what's
And I think we should be clear, our group doesn't have complete disposition over the access. It's advisory to Francis Collins.
right.
We're the first hurdle.
We're the first hurdle, right? But then the ultimate decision is taken by the director of NIH for access to the data. And it's
We're moving a lot of material. We're getting a lot more scientists who want to use it. Everyone's stepping forward, so we're picking up bigger cases.
I was surprised by the volume, I have to say. The volume of requests that have already come in, but maybe those of you, many of you here may not be surprised, and that would be interesting to hear.
So you mentioned that you want to be informed and that you want to know how these issues or the research will affect you. Does part of that include wanting to know what the results of the research are?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we have to be informed of what your outcome is for your research. So we do follow everything that's going on once the scientists pass that first group when they get to the end result and they're able to access that database. So we do want to know what's going on with your research, what's your outcome, if you're coming up with anything that's going to have a cure for anything, if you just found something unique.
Yes, like I said, it's mainly disclosure, what's going on. We haven't put in an overburden of request that you have to do it every month or every 6 months or whatever. But like if you come up with something significant, just inform us, maybe once a year or something like that. It's still in the process, like I said, it's still relatively new, so we still ironing out the kinks of exactly how we want to do things that's both beneficial to the scientific community and beneficial to the committee and the lifespan.
So far has the committee recommended not going forward with any requests?
Only one we delayed was like, we have delayed, we haven't denied anybody yet, only because of data security.
Most of everything, we're just looking to make sure that the scientists answer all the questions. And we put a lot of, the ones with the scientists, we weren't sure of IT, or what are you going to do with the HeLa cell, how will the HeLa cell help what you're trying to do. Like if they don't answer those questions, we'll send an email and ask for more of that information. And if they're able to answer those questions, then they'll automatically move on. But if they can't answer those questions, but at this moment, no one's been denied, just delayed.
And when I say delayed, it's only been a few days, because first because one of the things, initiative is we want to make sure, it's not a bottleneck, we don't want the group to be a holdup for anybody. So, like, in 1 month, we got 6 of them, so the first 6 that came in with 1 month, and we met and got them all back, and then we sent an email like, okay, we need additional information. Maybe 2 days later, the person sent us something back, and we went in and improved it. So, like I said, one of the processes, we want to make sure we are not an area of holdup for anybody working.
See, who's got the mic? You showing there's somebody in the back?
I might have missed this because I had to come in late, but I wanted to follow up on the profit question.
Because what I wondered is if proposals are going to go forward and there are going to be new treatments or drugs, is the family receiving any portion of profits, or does the family have a foundation or a group that would receive money maybe to address some of the concerns of people in your community in terms of healthcare access?
As of now, we went over Genome and really couldn't come up with a profit margin for it, but that doesn't mean some brilliant scientists couldn't. So basically, just let us know what's going on, and then we can proceed from there. Because basically, NIH can enforce, I guess, financial terms. So that would be something that would have to be worked out outside of that realm. But
At this moment, your research, your money.
so yes, basically, whatever you do is on you right now. Basically, I said our main concern is to be informed, so no more surprises.
We've got one person who might sit here. Sorry.
Thanks. I'm really fascinated about what you said about wanting to know about the results. And obviously we do a lot of research around here, and we don't really have a system in place that insists that participants in research get a report in sort of normal language about the results of the research. So most of our research is published in scientific journals, medical journals, whatever, and rarely makes it to the newspaper or to something that the community would access. Based on your experiences, do you feel like we have a duty to present results of research to everybody who participates in, or is it really something that only the stuff that sort of is groundbreaking or really important?
Well, theoretically, it wouldn't be possible because there's so many participants in research and so many anonymous tissue donors done, that wouldn't be practical. And in the case, like I said, is unique because our identity is well known around the world, and as well as the origin of the HeLa cells. But I don't know, I guess
HeLa cells is one,
it's a unique case.
it's very unique because normally when you get a cell line, or you take a biopsy, you use the cells or whatever, it gets a number put on it, but actually the HeLa cell has a name to it. So that's what kind of makes it a little more unique, because now you have the name of the person who contributed to the HeLa cell, and then you have a whole family. So that's what kind of makes it more unique, that puts you in a situation where you're like, okay, we want to let them know what's going on, because now you've already put the person or the family out there.
And also, I guess the question is we'll have to wrestle with over time, because there's sequencing becomes more cheaper. Because I was just watching a report on Bloomberg Sweet like technology to develop a sequence scanner that costs $1,000 to sequence a genome. So as price comes down, people able to sequence more, it's going to be less and less harder to de-identify the source. So I guess it's something we're going to have to, over time, medical community, maybe the NIH group, and everybody in general want to decide how they want to move forward. Like I said, not to be practical, to report to every participant, every donor, every tissue sample, but it got to be like some kind of middle ground. So, yeah, like I said, the question is, it's going to have to be an answer moving forward.
Does the family have any say over use of money from the royalties from the book or from the upcoming film?
No, we don't have say over that.
Benefit in any way?
No, basically she has open money.
Actually, at this moment, we benefit from Rebecca's Flute and Rebecca's Flute and a couple other people on a board where they have a certain stipend that they allow the Lex family to use for school education and healthcare. As you can imagine, being a college student, that we exceed that quickly in a year.
So in this discussion that we had with you, you guys have mentioned that you spend a considerable amount of your time in medicine and researching, this information that we're giving you. This sounds like a full-time job. Are you splitting this, or how are you managing this? Because I personally know I don't have enough time to follow up on things that interest me, you guys have this huge burden.
It's truly a full-time job because I participate on the board for Dunbar Scholars, and David and I, we travel the world speaking, and we do NIH now. I actually just got a full-time job, and they were like, when they were asking the things that I'm participating, the lady was like, oh my goodness, like, you do too much, can you do this? But we learn how to manage our time better, and it's more intriguing. I guess it keeps us going because we learn so much, and it gives us the opportunity to push our next generation.
Well, me, I kind of got, like I said, I'm an IT specialist, so my schedule is kind of flexible. So I would say whenever they, as long as I know ahead of time what it is I need to do, I can go ahead and schedule like, okay, I'm doing this today, so I'm not working. I work for another big company at night doing evening work, and I work for another company doing some other stuff like, all right, this day and this day I'm not doing this. Got to do NIH or medical stuff, and then yeah, I guess it's just, you just have to manage your time and your schedule. And because I've been in the IT world for a long time, I'm kind of high on the food chain, so I can kind of control my schedule.
We have a big family, so we're able
Oh yes, and it's divided amongst us. Like,
to
yeah, she does things with scouts, I don't know what she doing. I handle the IT, internet, website stuff, and NIH stuff, so. And nobody else knows what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. They're like, okay. And that's pretty much it. I gave her a password, so y'all good. Y'all got a password. I'm not good with, I'm good with, I'm more wordy, so like 128 characters doesn't work for me. I need more, so I'm like, y'all can switch, you know, whatever y'all want.
I'm just curious to know, how has the unfortunate sequence of events maybe inadvertently inspired the family? Has it piqued the interest of the younger generations to possibly get involved in science? And also, have you all been able to establish mentor-mentee relationships with some of the scientists and professionals that you're working with, so that maybe one day some of the HeLa, some of the LAX family members could lead some of these scientific projects in the future?
Absolutely. We have the next generation from me. My generation, which are the great grandkids, we're all in college. One has just finished her master's at site. Another one is an English major. She just went back for her master's. My sister and myself are in school for her RN. So a lot of us are heading toward the medical field. But now the generation under us, the great-grandkids, Ayana wants to be a gynecologist. My nephew, he wants to study research in general. He don't know what kind of research he wants to do. He just wants to know everything. So it's amazing because it pushes our children, and hopefully it'll push their children. It broke the cycle because if you read Rebecca Sweet's book, it was well written, but it left the family in a place called Lexington, where my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather were tobacco farmers. They were poor, they were uneducated. So a lot of times when people see the family, they're like, they're poor, they're uneducated, we need to give them $1. Like, but it's not like that at all. It's more so, my grandfather had pushed us. My grandfather was an engineer, and now he's pushing on his grandkids, and my uncle's pushing his kids. We've come a long way from being those tobacco farmers, and hopefully our next generation will come a long way from being where we are.
Well, I'll say, I guess having the exposure to my young kids and the younger generation will probably pull them into science a little bit, but right now, like I said, they're doing their own thing. So, my little son, he likes video photography. My other son, he's an engineer, but he's more building stuff. He's like, okay, that's nice, but he's not really focused on himself, but he will have a little bit of knowledge of the stuff. And myself, I will probably, when I get my, probably go for another degree in IT, but I might minor in biomedical or genetics or something like that. I haven't quite figured it out. I haven't fixed it in my schedule, but I said I will take some medical courses like that just to have an understanding.
I think I'm impressed with the next generation because yesterday I found out my niece's schedule was more busy than mine. And she actually went to a fundraiser. She had 10-year-old friends who are actually raising money for science, for kids who don't have things, and my nephew, robotics. And first time I heard about robotics, he's 13, he's in robotics, and I'm just impressed, like, they're all going into something, and they're all looking at things in the medical field, and they're digging. My niece tells me, she says, Nani, I'm going to be a doctor, but I need to make sure that I look out for people, and I make sure people are okay. And it makes you feel good, because it means that in the beginning, our mission was that people would recognize my great-grandmother as not just a cell, but as a person. And it passed the message to them that when you go into whatever field you go into, that you respect people, you talk to people in ways that they understand, and you treat them as if you want to treat your family, because it could be your mother, your grandmother. So I'm very impressed that they got what we couldn't get for 60 years.
Thank you all very much. Could you speak a little to how race continues to affect things, and in terms not only of the composition of the advisory committee, but other strides you might like to see Hopkins make?
Well, the advisory committee is very diverse, consists of minorities, women, and men, so, I mean, it's only a handful, but like all representatives, so. I honestly can't see no race issue in this area. Like I said, maybe back in the day, like with the initial inspection of the HeLa cell and having my name spelled lost and, and keeping my race out of the public eye. That was then, but now, like I said, going forward with the genome, I really haven't encountered any.
For science and the medical field, I don't think that race is as dominant as it was. Now it's a rich or poor thing. Either you're rich or you're poor. There's no in between. Either you got it or you don't. So we're breaking down those barriers, and NIH has proven that a lot of barriers are coming down. And just the fact that you guys came and said here these things shows that you have an interest and also breaking those barriers as you leave out to go to your classrooms and go back to your office. So more so, just the education part is keeping everyone educated. No more race things, just rich or poor.
Hi, I read the Rebecca Spoof book and couldn't put it down, and I had known nothing about the HeLa cells before that. So I don't work in the medical field except as an IT person. And I had two questions. One is, I came in late, so I don't know if these questions were already asked. Are there any pure HeLa cells stored in a repository somewhere, or is that too late? Is it too late to even think about that?
Well, the HeLa cells are cancer cells that was taken for us, so I don't know if you're going to get 100% per cells, because cancer cells only contain the X chromosome in it, so I don't know if you get a per Henrietta Lacks cell, but maybe a per.
So there are different types of HeLa cells, but there are distributors. Like I said, I think at Hopkins we spend about $100,000 a year buying what's thought to be the best HeLa cells from a company.
Oh, that's interesting. The second question is, did they ever discover why her cells, Henrietta cells, grew when no other cells did?
Well,
Was it just the virulence of the cancer, or?
Try to explain it, Elsie.
I believe what we were learning was she has more chromosomes than normal, and no, we haven't completely figured out why she's more special, why her cells are more special than mine. But
well, basically, after looking at the genome, we learned that the HPV 18 virus, human papillary, intersected with the MYC gene and caused a rapid growth of the HeLa tumor.
Yeah, see, so that was one of the reasons why the NIH really wanted to go ahead with the publication, the letter in Nature, because it was done probably in the best way possible, showing that it seemed to be the insertion of the HPV right in the MYC pathway, which is a central cell growth pathway, a random event, presumably where HPV is has been involved in many cells, but it just didn't exactly in this new pathway, which presumably is the reasons why these cells continue to divide and not die.
So in working with some of the local African American families and patients, what I noticed is there's still sometimes an underlying sense of distrust. I've heard people say, I don't trust Hopkins, they're going to steal my cells, they're going to steal my organs. And I'm wondering sort of with this partnership, have you seen a shift or do you envision a shift occurring sort of in the community and kind of educating about this partnership?
It's been that two sources.
I've seen a change. When we were growing up and when my grandfather was growing up, it was like a generational story where people would say, if you were of color, you stayed outside too long. We grew up around Hopkins. And if you were of color, that you had to go in the house before dark or Hopkins would snatch you up and they would do research on you. So a lot of people still would tell their children that, but I've seen a lot of change because my uncle actually got his bypass at Hopkins. So people are learning to trust again, and with NIH and the way they handle us, a lot of people look at it and they're more comfortable.
I think it's just a general racial thing, like I said, those urban myths about, in hospitals doing body snatch and treatment and stuff like that. That's just, as people become more educated and time goes on, I think all people just gonna start to trust doctors. But it's gonna come down to this guesswork of what are you gonna do with the information or what you gonna do with my cell samples now. So I think people will start, as time goes on, start to trust doctors in the medical community more and more. But it's just like I said, more of a question and consent and informed information.
It's like the boogie monster. People will always tell their children about the boogie monster, but it doesn't necessarily make it true.
And my father said, like I said, you come in the hospital, your arm pad hanging off, you ain't want nothing, you get you fixed, so you ain't want to worry about all basically all the myths, like I said, the urban myths.
So I'll add to the thanks for your taking time out of your busy lives to come here. It's really great for us. So I'm sure you must know that many high schools and many colleges around the country are now assigning Rebecca Skloot's book as required reading. And people seem to take away different things from reading the book. And I'd love to know if you could say to those college students or high school students one or two messages you'd love for them to take away from the book, what would they be?
I always tell people that when I'm stepping outside the book, pursue your passion. If you really believe in something, stick with it. Because Rebecca took 10 years writing this book. She went through many hurdles, many obstacles to get this book published. And even myself, when I first read the manuscript, I was like, okay, it'd be a nice little book to sit on the shelf. I had no idea what that type of impact. So I always tell people, pursue your passion, go what you believe in, because you never know what the outcome. I said, because Rebecca showed us that she started in this little house when she started writing this book, and now she, I'm sure her house bigger than what it is now. So pursue your passion no matter how long it takes, you never know the outcome.
But what I tell a lot of the college students to relate more to Uncle story about, I was actually watching a show called Everyone Hates Chris, and the mom's like, the little girl runs in the house, she said, Mom, Chris got hit by a car, give him Robitussin. Mom, Chris got shot, give him Robitussin. And a lot of times in the healthcare field, people have several fears. One of the fears is, will someone talk to me in ways that I don't understand? Will they do something to me that I don't understand? Do I have options? The fear of the bill, because it's either you buy a loaf of bread or you go to the hospital. And I tell people that when you go into these fields, that you have to make people feel comfortable, make sure that they understand what's going on with them, why are you doing it? And if you see that don't go out and talk to people in the terms all of us who went to school, we learned all these expensive terms like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Yes, we're excited when we go into these fields to use these words. Why? Because we pay for those words. as we go into those fields, we want to tell people like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, please just tell people your arms falling off. And status. So that's our biggest mission, just to let people know what you're doing, because again, they could be your mother, your father, your grandmother. It could be you. And if you don't tell people what you're doing to them, and if you don't give people options, you're stealing from them. And that's unethical.
I think we're gonna hire Veronica. What I think.
When we talk about the genome, we're talking a little bit about how people are put together. And I wonder where God fits in with this picture, whether anyone in the family has dealt with the spirituality of the situation, or what your own spiritualities say about the relationship of the genome to the person.
We're a very spiritual family. And I always say that God had his own mission. And his mission was that something horrible had to happen to my great-grandmother so that science could advance, so many other people could be healed. In the 60s, polio was something that was front line. A lot of people suffered from them. But now polio is something that you hear little to none of. So my grandmother was the greatest sacrifice to save all of us, you know, to make sure that your children, my children, doesn't have polio. It advanced science with in vitro fertilization and so many things.
Oh, okay, I think I know these things. I would say definitely had, say, spiritually, and God plays a hand in it, because for, like I said, for the fact that the HPV virus intersected in the big gene at that specific place, and then she, in turn, went to Johns Hopkins, where a certain person, Dr. Gow, was doing, taking samples of tissue to try to grow, and to try to grow cells, for her to actually come to that hospital, and then those tissue would be taken and given to him, and he had to be able to grow on it. So many different sperms that failed. It had to be a high power in play. You know, like I said, first is the intersection of the gene, then her going to Johns Hopkins, because I guess she could, well, hospitals were limited in who took black folks back then, but the fact that she came to Johns Hopkins, and that, like I said, he would have to take that sample. Because he could not have taken that sample, she could not have that virus. I mean, something had, a high power had to play.
And in our family, we always say that God sends you through things to get you to the things that you need to be to. You can't just go and be a millionaire without going through the proper steps and the protocols. You have to go through something to get to something.
Just to follow up, do you have any discussions at church or with your pastor, or do any of the family with respect to this issue, what you're dealing with?
Well, actually, I guess we kind of deeply involved with church because, as you know, I believe Steve is mentioned in the book a couple times. He's a deeply religious woman. And basically, for the past 16 years, she's been having a conference at her church every year, and we always very active participants in that and interact with pastors, church members, and church communities.
As long as we went to Virginia, we went to Roanoke, Virginia, and we went to a church service there where my great-grandmother was a member of that church, and we talked to our pastor a bit, and it was different.
And we went to a couple of Catholic universities where, you know, they study spirituality and different things. We spoke to them, we spoke on the spiritual aspect of it, so we have touched on that aspect of the HeLa cell and what it does mean and the higher power of it.
Yeah, Rebecca's book challenges a lot of the students that we come across, they have different views. Of course, the lawyers, the future lawyers and the doctors, and even IT looks at everything different. And it's amazing to see how everyone brain works and what they pull out of it.
Yeah, especially touching on a lot of areas that pull a lot of different people from a lot of different disciplines together.
We have time for probably 2 more questions, and then I want to.
2 related questions before. You said that the special nature of the HeLa cells is they could be immortalized because of this papillomavirus MIC combination. Since that time, that was very special at the time that the HeLa cells were put out. Now you're talking about a whole generation of stem cells and induced stem cells with the factors that make those cells immortalizable. How are they different, and how do you see the future of the research with these 2 different immortalizable cell types?
Well, obviously, there's lots of different pathways to get to the issue about an immortalized cell, or even a cell that is, goes through many generations and can be used in multiple places. I do think that, what we have worked through the consent process is that, we believe a living cell is different than extracting DNA from a blood sample, and that we understand that participants that are giving cells that are going to be immortalized have to be made aware of it, have to be given some type of description that we do the best we can. Again, realizing that we can't describe anything that's going to happen in 10 or 20 years, but we do our best. And we understand that there are, maybe somewhere in that 20% range where individuals do not feel as comfortable giving consent for a cell line as they do for a blood specimen. I want to though I do want to ask, because we're not talking much about the regulations here today, and I've asked the last time this several times, I'll give you one, and your views may change over time, but remember, based on the regulations, you would have never known anything about what happened. You wouldn't have known the good parts about the HeLa cell. You wouldn't have known the bad parts. It would have just been, something you may have read in a textbook that was the XY gene, and you wouldn't have had, or XY cell, you would have known nothing. You're a unique position to say, we would rather, as a family, or at least to speak for yourself, I know that's kind of hard to speak for the whole family. For yourself, are you still glad that you've learned about everything that's happened, or do you think it would have been better to just be, unaware of it?
Actually, this one I can speak for the family, because this one has been a very extensive conversation, always on the front line, but we are glad. We are, because now we know that someone that was special to our family helped other people, so.
Yeah, there's an enormous sense of pride. So we definitely glad, some things maybe known sooner or how it came out, but other than that, we're glad for all that it is accomplished, all that is done, we're glad to know about it.
It's a unique situation.
So do you think we should be giving people that option when we are asking for their blood sample for cell lines to say, it's an irrevocable decision. You can't take it back. We're going to identify that cell line. Everybody that uses it is going to know from who that derived. And, to some extent, contacting all the family would be difficult. But do you think we should give people that option when they're given a blood sample?
Absolutely. Because a lot of us want to know what's going on, and if we're doing something unique to science, we want to know if something in our body is doing something as extraordinary as HeLa cells. Like, I think if it wasn't my great-grandmother and it was me in that situation, I would want to know.
Yes, I would think that we would want to know as it comes down to logistics of how would we do this, how would you, like I said, we got so many massive valuable things, how would we sample and let everybody know? That would be a question, but like I said, with us, the HeLa cell brings a sense of pride. And I know I've seen reports of other people who had cell lines generated from them. They're happy about it, but they also want to know more about what's being used. But for our case, we're in a unique situation where we actually get to know all people who have cell lines and they know about it don't get to know what's going on. So it's probably a personal preference, because I'm sure some people would want to know. Some people, the kid lets you know, you can take my sample. If it helps people, I'm happy for you, and I'm done with it. And other people who want to know just to follow what's going on.
And then knowing has raised for me a lot of conversation. It's a lot of talking in the medical field. Whether you are doing better by your patient, how your work is affected. You know, for us knowing, everyone in this room, for all of us knowing about HeLa and conversations we're having at the water fountain or in our own boardrooms, the classrooms, it's just made so many conversations and it made us better in that field. So knowing has made you second guess, am I taking good care of my patients? If I've done something that I felt was unethical and didn't really think about it at that moment when I was doing it, because some of us, a lot of times, I move so fast that I'm like, did I do that? Like, sometimes it makes me double check, knock on my patient door, give them the respect, the privacy, the dignity. So, no one has changed science.
Yeah, I think knowing might pull more people into the science of the community, because if you know your mother's going through something and you actually able to follow what's going on, and you might be like, okay, how am I going to do this? Because going to speaking engagement, visiting colleges and going to different labs and seeing some fascinating stuff, I'm like, wow, if I know all this, I might have, well, with science as opposed to IT. Now, I'm happy with that, but I'm saying some stuff is like truly amazing, just beyond textbooks I never knew. And being exposed to it is like, wow. So, giving people the option to know might get them more engaged into it. And I think that would be a benefit to everybody. Again, like I said, logistics of it, how it would be done. That's a different beast.
So I knew this was going to happen, that the hour would go incredibly quickly, but we are at that time. I thought I would end by just, there's a reason why I wanted to do this, and you'll see. I wanted to quote from the acknowledgement that now is going to be required. One of the questions, what are part of the elements in terms of having access to the data now? One of the requirements, any dissemination of any work that follows from access to these data have to include the acknowledgement. And I want to just be from part of the acknowledgement, but now during every conversation. Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cell line that was established from her tuber cells without her knowledge or consent in 1951 have made significant contributions to scientific progress and advances in human health. We are grateful to Henrietta Lacks, now deceased, and to her surviving families for her surviving family members for their contributions to biomedical research. And we're really grateful to have David and Veronica and Dan here today. So thank you all so much.